This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 159.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE family? Welcome back to another episode. This is not a solo show, but Benny's not here for the intro and outro, so you're just gonna have me for the first few minutes. A couple weeks back, we did an interview with John Cook from Consensus. We talked mainly about what he's found in terms of his research about sales engineering, but he is from product marketing. And today we have somebody else from product marketing from Cisco, or previously from Cisco. And today he's starting his own company, but we're going to talk about marketing and sales engineering. We're not going to talk about they haven't done any research into sales engineering specifically. Like John, I don't know what's on my face, like John Cook had, but I wanted to talk about marketing because it is a viable path. I've seen a few SEs go from sales engineering into product marketing, and they became very successful, and they moved up. They got paid fairly well. So I just wanted to talk about it, discuss marketing in general, maybe go into some specifics. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about marketing, but today's guest, well, let's just jump into the show and have him introduce himself. Good afternoon, Neeraj. That's not how you start a podcast, but good afternoon. How are you doing?
Absolutely. It's 1 o'clock. Yes. Thank you for having me, Ramsey and Benny. I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And kudos to you guys, first of all, because you've been doing this 150 times and over. So it's no mean feat.
Thank you.
Just a lot to learn from you guys. Are doing a great job, and just happy to be here. Like I mentioned earlier, happy to be one of the tiles. On your podcast. But thank you.
Next time we invite people over, we're going to say, "Hey, do you want to be one of the tiles?" And they'll have no idea what we're talking about. But if you're listening and we ask you that question, that means we want you to be a guest.
Or sales engineering squares, maybe like Hollywood squares with sales engineering squares. I don't know. Sorry,
all right, moving on. Okay, so Neeraj, who are you and what do you do, and what did you do in the past, and why are you here?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, but I'll try to keep it at a very high level. It's pretty straightforward, I guess. Most recently, I am the founder of this company called Snackwyze, and I must say, it's a new company, so not many people know about it. It's only been, I want to say, a couple of months since I went into it full time, and we are doing this full time. And we build Snackwyze for people like you and people like myself, meaning the sales engineers, the sales teams, and also for product marketers. And we can talk all about that later, but that's what I do currently. And before creating the Snackwyze, really the inspiration or the idea came to me based on my experience as a product marketer. And I was a product marketer for about 8 years at Cisco. So all of my experience has been enterprise networking, software products. And I worked a lot with the sales guys, as a matter of fact, for my day-to-day. I was kind of dependent on it in a way. So that's that. And then and prior to that, by training, I'm an engineer. Again at Cisco, so I'm almost a teenager at Cisco, I want to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing, but I really enjoyed my time there, and I started off as a hardware engineer back then, a long time ago. And so that's my professional. Personally, I live in the Bay Area with my kids, kindergarten and fourth grade. My wife, and I dabble into mountain biking, though you can't tell, but I try to do mountain biking a little bit to keep my sanity. And yeah.
Well, you don't have any scratches on your face or like dark eyes, so I can't tell. No. Oh, there it is. Okay.
It's not from mountain biking, but.
Oh, okay. Well, you can say it's from mountain biking. I wouldn't know the difference.
There you go.
We can't hear you, Benny. Benny's been having technical difficulties with his microphone. It wasn't tested very well.
I just have a lot of loud noises around me, streets and stuff. But I did want to quickly say that even still, mountain biking down the Bay Area, I think, is still a very high-risk activity. If I'm not mistaken, there are mountain lions or cougars that kind of strom those mountains up at least like up around the Bay Area. Are there not?
Yes, and actually, I haven't. I only met a mountain lion once. I took a picture of it, but that was not when I was biking. Actually, I'll share it with you guys. I was on a trail. It was, prime COVID times, and there was nothing else to do. So I went up on a trail, and I come up on this trail and I see a mountain lion like staring at me. So I took a picture. I was calm enough, but I didn't proceed. I just ran back downhill.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mountain lion.
I'm surprised they didn't run after you.
No, yeah, maybe they don't like, I don't know, people like me.
Okay. All right. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
All right, coming back to marketing. So you went and you became a hardware engineer at Cisco. And from that, you moved into marketing. How was the change for you going from hardware engineering, which is usually very, like, you're focused on one area, and now you went into marketing, which might be a little bit different. How was the transition?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it wouldn't have happened, honestly, if it weren't for me working with some of the product managers back when. And I used to support some of the events like Cisco Lives, right? So we had these big booths and we used to take our hardware products along with the whole portfolio of products at Cisco Live, attended by thousands and thousands of people. And that's when I started talking with the marketing folks, because the attendance for the marketing folks was heavy. So it was all product marketers, product managers, marketing folks, salespeople, and a few engineers sprinkled in between, right? Okay. And then I really liked the energy that these guys brought to the table. It was talking to the customers, and and I made a lot of friends at Cisco, honestly, at that time when I was a hardware engineer. So an opportunity came along, and I like going to Las Vegas. That's a different thing. But this opportunity was something I thought might be a great thing. It might be different than hardware engineering, because I was in the lab mostly, as a junior engineer, looking at the, I think they used to call it like, the boards that came back from the field, kind of damaged goods, and
RCA, root cause analysis. That's sort of thing.
I thought, probably let's move on and see something else out there, maybe work with the customers a little bit more. And I had this technical background too, and some of my friends indicated that that might come in handy as a marketer. And I just made the switch because I got the opportunity, and I guess that's how I became a product manager first. I didn't come into pure marketing before that, and I worked on a software product, an enterprise networking product that we brought to market along with my fellow product managers and engineering teams. And I was still learning back then. It was all new to me, product management, and then I got the opportunity to work on something competitive with at that time it was VMware, and and then because of the technical background and again the opportunity to do something competitively with our products and their product is how I came into technical marketing, doing competitive analysis or competitive marketing. And I just started at I guess it was a natural transition for me to look at the entire marketing portfolio amongst there were other PMs, of course, PMMs, but I was one of them looking at the software stack for the cloud networking. So that's been my journey. It's kind of I don't know if it's unique, but quite a few people go through that transition, and I did the same.
That's interesting. So I worked at Alcatel-Lucent, which is somewhat of a competitor of Cisco, not in all aspects, but at one point I had to do a competitive analysis between our product and the Cisco product, and I had fun destroying that. But now Cisco's my customer. So.
No. And you're right. I mean, I think, and we can talk about this later on, but when we do competitive analysis, it's always easy to kind of like, hey, this doesn't work. Doing like
you break it. It's easy to break it if you want to.
But yeah, and it's a different world where coming from marketing, you don't want to really bash the other guys. It's not the way it always takes the high road, and that's an important learning for me, because you really don't want to do that. So anyways, I mean, long story short, it was an interesting experience just talking about the good stuff that Cisco does and how it helps the customers, something that is learning as a marketer, right? You want to be talking about the benefits and not about the
to clarify, I was not in marketing, I was in support, and a marketing person asked me to do the test, and I did my absolute best to basically pound it. And you can always do that. No matter what product is, you can find something in it to destroy it. And then I gave him the information. So, I have the same bottle, but it's not here. But so basically, I gave him the information. I don't remember what he used it for. It was my first year at Alcatel-Lucent. So
that's really what he might have quoted you on something. According to Ramsey.
No one knew who Ramsey was. That was back in 2009. Nobody cared. But I do have a question for you about like marketing in general. There's a difference between product marketing and corporate marketing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit what the differences are for people listening and are confused of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so when people think about marketing, even before we talk about PMM, right, product marketing, and I'll talk about my experience as a enterprise marketing person, right, and obviously creating a startup in this space, I have a little bit different opinion for smaller companies. But even before that, if you talk about marketing, people think about the hoardings that you see, or mostly advertising, right?
Yep.
It's mostly advertising. People think about the logo, right, for lack of better words, like the branding,
Yeah.
branding, right? So those are all great things, but things that you communicate to the wider audience in terms of the brand. And don't get me wrong, I mean, brand could mean different things, but the way you choose your artistic representation of the brand, or your PR, like that you communicate to the world as a company, right? That is all corporate marketing. Corporate marketing is something that's the voice of a company, the voice of the brand as such, of the entire company, of the entire organization. Product marketing, on the other hand, typically at Cisco, is something that you do for a specific business unit or a specific product.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not, and obviously you have to consider the corporate marketing voice into it. You have to be consistent in what you say. But product marketing, again, is, and traditionally has been defined, and I have a different take on it, but it's traditionally defined as something which sits at the intersection of engineering, product management, and customer support. And you can argue it's all of the above or none of the above. And in my opinion, it's, the product marketing function is, the difference is just like a sales engineering group, except we are trying to establish a channel of trust, if you will, right? Establish trust at scale. There's so many prospects out there who do not know what do you guys do, or what your product does. And your job as a PMM is to communicate or establish a channel, at least with the prospects. And that may come through many activities, right? Product launches, you talk about your positioning and you talk about your messaging. All of these are PMM, right? All of these things are done by a PMM manager.
Yeah. I like that. I like sales engineering at scale is product marketing, basically. Like the sales engineers have the personal relationships with the customers, which you may not have, but you can touch more customers. So the more effective you are as a PMM, which starts with product marketing manager, right?
Yeah.
The easier our job is, because now we have the story already from our PMM, and also, you can share stories, and you can take stories that you learn from SEs and use that for your product marketing.
Absolutely. And that's so critical, because especially, I mean, enterprise products are, it's a beast, right? I mean, this already established products. You think about Cisco, I mean, you can say so many things, but people already know what you do, kind of. But if you come down, to a smaller company, that gets a little challenging, because now with the product-led movement going on, marketing is not just good enough to create a marketing qualified lead. I mean, if the marketing qualified lead and the sales qualified lead, if the gap is too big, then I think it's not good enough. So that's for that reason, I think, and because the customer is going to talk to the sales at a later point in the journey now,
yep,
the product, that function is coming closer. And I would think a PMM should really be tied to the hip with the SE in capturing the use cases, and and then convert all of that into the voice of the customer, or the messaging or the positioning of your product. So you are all on the same page, and customer is not, other customer knows what can be expected out of the engagement that comes at a marketing or a sales level.
Something you just mentioned there is really interesting. So yeah, for sure, find that alignment, or I guess closing that gap between what's an SQL or sales qualified lead versus an MQL, marketing qualified lead, because it ends up in sales's hands in the end, is super important. But that's really interesting to me, because I never realized that there was a big difference between the two. In that, have you found in your experience that the expectations from, I suppose, marketing versus the expectations from sales with respect to what is a qualified lead, are they very different across organizations?
Absolutely. So again, I'll put on my Cisco hat, because the experience from that aspect. A marketing qualified lead really, because we are a product, our motivation is, we are measured by how many leads we generate. So our goal is not really don't quote me on this, but my job really is not to make sure that, Ramsey signs up for a newsletter, you sign up for a newsletter, as long as you did, right? And as long as I can pass you guys on to the sales guy. I don't know really, are you the right kind of guys? Should my SC get on the demo call with you just to realize, oh, it was a waste of time, right? So marketing qualified lead at many times, on many occasions, may not be the sales qualified lead. Once you say, okay, this makes sense, let's have further conversation, then it becomes a sales qualified lead. And for that reason, I mentioned MQL and SQL are different. For a smaller company, again, you never know. It could be one and the same. If because of the smaller marketing teams and a close alignment with both the teams could be talking to each other. At that point, you're messaging, or if you have like a little demo or something, then the prospect really knows, okay, this is great. I really, really want to know about this. At that point, it could be a sales qualified lead. There could be one and the same. So it really depends on where you're coming or approaching this from. And it's still MQL is marketing owned and SQL is sales owned. So at the end of the day, it's always going to be different.
It's funny about MQL. A lot of times, me as a sales engineer, I'm doing research into a company. So I'm going in, I'm downloading a white paper, and all of a sudden I get an email from a sales representative trying to sell me something, except I was trying to do research so I can sell you something. So yeah, like MQLs, I haven't had a lot of success with MQLs, mainly because I already know most of my customers and there aren't that many new ones coming up. So yeah.
Sure. At bigger companies, it may not be as valuable, and but for a smaller company, when that lead comes in, and that's where we are trying to do something with Snackwyze, where our goal is to make sure that people who actually click on that request a demo button are really meaning to have a demo for lack of anything else. I mean, if there's nothing else, the customer, the prospect will click on the request a demo button because there's nothing else to do. Right. Yeah. But maybe we can qualify them a little bit earlier on and bring it to you, to the sales guys. Then it might be a little bit more better in terms of saving you guys time and headache.
Yeah, I know that I've never, as a sales engineer, I've never pressed on request a demo to research a customer of mine. I feel like I don't want to do that because it'll be wasting their time, and I don't want to get random emails from random people.
That you will get, yeah. That if you click.
You've mentioned Snackwyze a couple of times. How do you spell Snackwyze? Just to make sure if people want to go check it out, we'll leave a link in the show notes, but maybe you should spell it out for people.
No, that's good. It's actually, it's funny. It's just like the snack like you eat. And I'm a foodie, so I don't know, it's just apt to have the name of Snackwyze, WYZE. And what it means is creating bite-sized content. In our cases, guided walkthroughs and guided demos. So it's like bite-sized. Yeah, it's Snackwyze.
Yeah, Snackwyze.app.
Yeah, snackwyze.com.
.com. Okay. All right. So people should check it out if they're so inclined. And this is not just for corporate companies. Like I can log in and use it and build my own portfolio. This is not a sponsored show, but I took a look at Snackwyze, and I think it would be useful for SEs to use it in general.
Well, talk about a crossroads between sales engineering and sales product marketing. I mean, Snackwyze essentially is sales engineering at scale to a degree. In that, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I guess there's so much more than just demos and like interactive experience, I suppose, that a demo can, or that an SE can provide. But it's kind of cool how you're able to record. I just kind of took a brief look at things, but the fact you're able to kind of record an experience or how to have a screen cap experience and make it interactive and then shoot that out to a whole bunch of different people without you necessarily having to be there. And then eventually, bring them in even further and then have a more tailored conversation with them. How amazing is that? I think things like that are incredible because there's so much time just wasted, either kicking tires or sometimes sales engineers being somebody that had that one-to-many relationship with many salespeople, you get strung out pretty easily as well. So anything at scale to eventually kind of bring them into a more confined funnel eventually is a good thing. So yeah, big fan of Snackwyze.
Yeah, so we've talked and I don't think this is marketing at scale. This is automating, basically, just getting rid of the first step. And we've talked to a few companies that do something similar to you, but you're also targeting individual SEs who can log in and use it as well, which is different, which is why I enjoy it, because my company doesn't buy this stuff for me. And I have to buy it for myself and expense it at a later date.
I got you, buddy. You got this.
Yeah, thank you.
I got you.
Yeah, but the point, we weren't going to discuss Snackwyze. Like, I'm happy we mentioned it, but that's not the point of the conversation. I think marketing and sales engineering are very similar and very different. And also an SE could go into marketing. I know a few of them, and that's why I want to talk about it. And marketing people can go into sales engineering and be successful. Is there training for someone going from hardware engineering to product marketing?
There's no training as such. I mean, there's no official training, because that's not a path that many people take, or the companies don't. Well, I want to say it's something that is personal to you, right? It's really what you want to do. So for that reason, there doesn't exist a formal training as such. But what I've seen is, if you're inclined to, you've already inclined to do something like this, people are more than happy to. It's sort of on the job training, right? Because if you know the product, I think all that remains to be done is the soft skills. Even how do you communicate to the customer? How do you, all of the things that come on the job, I guess, as a SE, right? So the short answer is no training as such, but there is training on how to do marketing, how to do product marketing, how to transition from one to another. I don't think so.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is it's kind of similar for sales engineering, although I think there's a little bit more training for sales engineers, especially now. But when I first started as a sales engineer, there aren't any resources. And I did the on-the-job training, and it took me 1.5 years to know that I'm going down the wrong path. Right? You're familiar with the spray and pray methodology, or show up and throw up, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yeah.
I was great at that. Perfect. I can beat anybody because I have my slides memorized, all 300 pages memorized. So I did it wrong. What stopped you from doing marketing wrong, and how do you know if you were doing it wrong? And that's my thinking of why is there training.
No, nothing stopped me from doing wrong. I did a couple of things wrong. I did screw up a few times. I mean, to be honest, I mean, simple things like, consider this, right? Product market. One of the things product marketers do is present at an event, and I actually included a name of a competitor in a wrong way in front of the audience without realizing I'm doing it. And it was not, it's not even a competitor. It was like a sort of a customer. Yeah. And it had to do something with the big data breaches that happened at Experian and those kind of. I boldly put out the name of the I should not say culprit, but bad things happen. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a breach, and you highlighted them out. Basically, you showed them in a negative light.
Yeah,
to say,
so that's my biggest blunder, right? That's my biggest blunder.
Yeah,
and I could have, it could have been really bad, but I'm glad that things were not as bad. So things happen. I think it's on the job training. It's it's for a reason. It's called on the job training. So it's learning as you go. I mean, I think. I don't think there is any script written down as to how to stop one. I think it's up to you really to take it on you as a PMM. And I think what helped me though is being a little bit technical. So all of the things are fine, right? But if you are really confident about what you're going to say about the product technically, then the job becomes much easier to communicate that, as opposed to somebody who is not too familiar with the product and it comes from a marketing background. Then, and I'm only talking about the technical products, right? Like Cisco, for example, technical product. It only helps. So I think that's something that helped me tremendously when making this transition. But other than that, I think if there is no other sort of do's and don'ts, so to speak, it really depends on a case-to-case basis. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I heard a horror story as well from sales team that mentioned the competitor that the customer was not aware about or aware of, and they ended up buying from the competitor.
From the competitor, classic.
Yes. So
yeah, those kind of things cannot be taught. I mean, it's really up to you not to screw up, or maybe screw up once and never do it again.
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes, hopefully. Or for me, in this case, I learned from somebody else's mistake, because I never thought about not talking about the competitor in case the customer was not aware of them. But ever since then, I don't talk about competitors. And even if the customer asks, like, who's your biggest competitor? It's like, yeah, there isn't anybody that does exactly what we do, because even though we do have competitors, we do things differently. We have other products that we can add that they don't. They have other products that they can add that we don't. But I don't say that. I just say there isn't exactly somebody that does exactly what we do. So we don't have a direct competitor, except we do. So.
Absolutely. And that is important, because as a product marketer, when you're talking about the competitive things, it's really important for you to highlight the benefits over anything else. Like we talked about it earlier, but if you go that route and you actually show them, instead of downloading a data sheet, what if you could show them, based on a specific vertical, based on a specific use case, in quickly you can show them, hey, you know what, this is something that you should care about, and this is how we can help solve it. That's something I learned from obviously working with some of the senior PMMs, but I think that helps a lot, and I think it avoids you from being in that tricky situation where you have to now, you don't know you know your competitors, but you don't know them well enough, I would say.
Yeah, so, and a feature they didn't have last month, they could have it this month, especially right now with SaaS and new features every day. Yeah. So yeah, no, I agree. Benny, you had a question, I think.
I do, yeah. Just so maybe to go back a little bit, about your background, or maybe just about the on-the-job training a bit, maybe slightly related, maybe not. But to notice that between, let's say, you being a hardware engineer over at Cisco to eventually moving into the product marketing role, or just product marketing role, product manager role, all that stuff. I guess as somebody that came into sales engineering without a technical background, and I also do agree with you as well, where if you have that technical background, it is easier to transition to becoming a more articulate sales engineer rather than going the reverse way, being more salesy and then learning the technical stuff afterwards. So I'm kind of curious, what did that, or between those two times, you had an MBA take place, or rather you got your MBA. What did the MBA do, I suppose, or did it do anything to make you a more effective, I don't know, I guess product marketer, product owner versus the more engineering side of things?
Yeah, I could have invested in a Bitcoin, never mind. Just kidding. It cost me a lot of money. No, but on a serious note, no, I want to say it didn't, well, it did help a little bit. It helped a little bit. The reason for me doing my MBA was I had this inclination to go back to school, and I was kind of missing going back to school, I guess. But also at the same time, well, many things happened, right? I had the opportunity to do so, before our kids, and I think I had the time to do it. I always wanted to know more about the business and learn, get some formal training, if you will. And then also Cisco was supportive of it. So all of these things fell into place, and I said, okay, why don't I make the most out of the time I have? And it did help me a lot. Not only, it's not something that you use every day, but now that, I'm starting a company, for example, or if I'm a PMM, there are aspects of it that comes once in a while you will leverage, right? It could be in terms of writing content, or it could be in terms of writing a value proposition, or it could be something where you, not so much in terms of like financial courses and all that. That's good to know, but it's really not so. It's only theory is good. You're never going to implement it unless you're in finance. But marketing, product management, entrepreneurship courses, team building, all of these things do help in one form or fashion or some ways, and along the journey. And I think it did help in bits and pieces. So I'm glad I did it. Was it good to get me another job right away? That was never my intention. So I never tried to do MBA to get another job in another field. But I'm glad I did it. It always helps. There are elements of it, and I'm always in touch with the connections I made, the friends I made. I'm always in touch with my professors who are so supportive, and even anything I do, I will run it by them sometimes to say, hey, does it make sense? And my friends whom I did so many courses with, they're in different companies. So I think the network effect is also a big thing and I did it part-time. So that's one of the biggest takeaways for me. Doing my MBA, and that was just my personal reason of doing it. So I'm glad I did it. And I think we lost you, Benny, again.
Yeah, we lost you, Benny.
Muted. Sorry. So I'll go quickly say that the whole idea about an MBA, or the executive MBA in general, especially as an adult, once you're in your career, such a great networking opportunity. But would you recommend, I guess, for people that are coming from more of a technical background, without necessarily having to get an MBA, what are the things that you'd recommend them look into? Obviously listen to the show and all, but what else would you recommend people do to kind of up their business skills a little bit, without having to, again, go to school for it?
Yeah, so I think personally for me, and based on my experience, nowadays, so there are two things. One is the learning aspect of it. And then the other aspect is networking, which cannot be had unless you're actually going to school. But purely from a learning aspect, there are so many things out there. There are so many courses out there. There are so many trainings out there, websites like Coursera and LinkedIn. So you can learn all of the things, no problem. You can, you don't have to pay that much money to learn things. And as far as putting that into practice, there is no better way to actually just put it into practice and see what happens. In my case, I tried, like when I started my earlier company, it was an app-based business. That's the time I was doing MBA. It helped me a lot in that way. I was actually practicing what I was learning. So I could understand, hey, this is some of the things you do, like, company valuation and things like that are something you don't learn unless you actually go into it and start doing it. So learning can be done. I would say if you can have the opportunity to learn it somewhere else, you can probably not do the MBA. But at the same time, if you're so inclined to do the MBA and you want to really go back to school, you want to have that, miss that feeling of not being in school for a long time, you want to meet new people, then by all means do MBA, right? And there is a movement actually where big companies are actually saying, hey, degrees are no longer essential. I don't know about that. I know it's a controversial topic, so I'll stay away from it. But I think it comes down to this: is what do you learning opportunities plenty, I say.
I want to share my thoughts. I know I wasn't asked, but I want to share my thoughts on this topic. You mentioned that there are a lot of courses out there that you can actually learn. You don't need to do an MBA to learn the MBA. And I like that because when you do an MBA, you're doing so many different courses that finance might not be useful for you. You can pick and choose whatever you want to learn. And the best way to learn is by actually doing. I graduated university. I didn't know how to do anything up until I started work, and I learned from my work. And I did my master's in engineering management, which I still to this day have no idea what the hell was that for. But that's besides the point. So, and then there's the networking aspect of it. Today, there's a billion ways you can network. You don't need to do an MBA to network. And the reason I'm saying that is because MBA is expensive. Like if the company you're going to work for is going to pay for it, by all means, go and do it. It's a nice experience. But if you're going to pay for it out of pocket, do what Tim Ferriss did. I don't know if you're familiar with the Tim Ferriss story. Tim Ferriss, he's like a famous author, and he wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, the 4-Hour Body, and all that.
Yeah.
He wanted to do an MBA, but it was $120K at some university. So he took the $120K and started investing instead, and made that money back. So which would have been better? Did he need to do the MBA? He could have lost that. He could have lost that money altogether, right? But at least he would have learned while doing it, versus paying the company to tell him, paying a university to give him theory, and then he has to go lose that money anyways. At least that's my opinion. And I'm not sure why we're talking about that. How did we get here?
That's a good take. I mean, that's why I said jokingly, it was part joke, it was part not joke, is I would have invested in Bitcoin. I think it's the education. Why? I mean, you can go back and say, why even go to school, right? I can teach my kids how to do how to be a hacker. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Yeah. but I guess it's a fine balance at the end of the day.
Well, school, like if you want to be an engineer, you have to go to engineering school, right? To be certified as an engineer, especially civil, mechanical, that sort of thing. From a computer perspective, you can do almost anything without going to school.
Yeah, maybe this is a part 2 marketing. We should talk about should we go to school?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a different story. But anyway, okay, coming back on track. So you mentioned that you've worked a lot with sales engineers throughout your career in marketing. Is there something that you learned from them that you were able to implement as a marketer?
Yeah, so I think personally, as a PMM, we didn't have many opportunities to interact with the customer directly. Right, that was one of the biggest. Although we would like to have had that happen, but the only interactions I've had with the customer is when I was a PMM, a product manager. It's a different story. But in the PMM, it was only the interactions we had at events. Right, so if you're in an event, you come across a customer, and that was far in between. So that's one aspect where the SEs guys, they would come back and say, hey, we need help with. No, that was the opportunity to understand, okay, what we are saying doesn't absolutely make sense. This is what makes sense. So in that regard, I think that's what I learned, and give it back, and take all of that information, bits and pieces from different SEs, and you always, as a PM, you have a set of friends, right? You go to SEs you would like to work with, and I had my group too, my band, and I would always, we used to have a lot of beers and everything, and when they used to come in town, we used to hang out, and that was the source of information. So yeah, I mean. And, in general, I found SEs are pretty, they're good at speaking with customers. They're pretty approachable. All the soft skills are pretty, out there. And then you learn that, what customer, when he's sitting behind the desk, is like this entity where you should be scared of them. But when you talk to these SEs, it's like, no, I mean, you work with the customer, these are the things you learn from them, and it's a dialogue. So being those are the kind of things I think I'm fortunate enough to learn with these SEs, so to speak. And of course, there is always the use cases and the real world information that comes back. But I would say, it's great hanging out with the SE gang, and I think that's my learnings from it, so to speak.
Good. Those are some good insights. And maybe just to flip that around a little bit, what can sales engineers learn from product marketing?
I want to say don't do any, I don't know, I should say it, but no BS. I think we have a PMS, marketing in general, now that we know there's different kinds of marketing, but what does marketing do? Tell me, right? How many people are going to say BS, right? Not that you guys are going to say it, but it's
not to your face.
I've come to you, not to my face. I know, that's the reality. You can say what you have to talk about marketing, but at the end of the day, it's like,
well, same thing they say about sales in general. Like as SEs, sales is in the title, so BS is in the title there too.
You're entitled to do that. We're not entitled to do that.
Yeah,
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's that's one thing. I don't know if there is anything. I mean, we can all learn from each other. At the end of the day, it's like one person to another, and the functions are different. But
I think to your point though, like it's pretty like the idea of sales, like definitely sales engineers sometimes will, I don't know, maybe embellish certain things, to get to push the needle a bit closer to a sale. Yeah. But that's also because we're dealing with specific deals, I suppose, or maybe like little issues that might come up from overpromising could be mitigated on a deal by deal basis. But because you're doing that at scale and marketing, like doing sales engineering at scale, you really can't be, shooting a lot of fake information out there that have all these people with these false conceptions coming into the sales funnel with those false conceptions. So I think that's a really good insight, that just by virtue of the scale or the volume of messages that you're sending out and the people that are receiving your messages versus the people receiving a sales engineer's messages, we could probably do to learn a little bit, being a little bit more honest about it.
I don't want to be the person who said somebody's heard from me, and I would be like, oh, when did I say it? It could be. Yeah. So I don't know.
I just love data sheets.
There you go.
When I read a data sheet, I'm like specific companies, if they're talking about line rate, they kind of add both directions and becomes line rate as 2 times as much that it should be. And I'm like,
that's
how does that work?
That actually brings me to another, one interesting thing is there are 2 kinds of people, right? One are the techie. So I'm really scared what I'm going to talk to the technical person. I don't want to talk to him because, they're not interested in they don't have anything. They don't want to listen to me as a marketer, right? So I'm going to be away from that person because they want to talk about the line rates and they want to talk about speeds and feeds.
Yeah,
I'm comfortable speaking to somebody who's not the technical guy because I don't want to be in that position. Because somebody else, my management is expecting me to put out a message and positioning and all that stuff. And my audience, I think, is going to be the person who buys from me. He's the guy who's going to use it, but I don't want to. He's always going to come back and say,
it is difficult to talk to the technical person who's going to use it on a day-to-day basis because they're going to, like, whatever you're selling, if it's software or it's hardware, they're going to ask about every field. Like my customers, Cisco is my customers, and when I first joined, we were talking about segment routing and PSEP, so networking technologies. And I showed up. Now, Cisco wrote the standard on those technologies.
Yep.
And I showed up to do a demo of how our company implemented their standard. And they started asking me about like every bit. And if you ever read an RFC, you just go Google RFC 2544 or whatever, something easy. And it's written like in it's not Times New Roman. It's what does Notepad write in?
Oh, I don't know, but I know that font. Which
it's like it's just like very monotone font. It's Consolas, I think, or Korean New.
Okay.
It's written in Korean New. It's the hardest thing to read. It's like 500 pages, and they're asking me about every bit in that page, and I hated my life. Luckily for me, I had asked the PM to be on the call because I knew that's going to happen. It's like, oh, you want that bit, PM? Yeah, we support it. That was the conversation. So
I
yeah,
remember segment routing, man. I know a couple of guys on Cisco side. I think Bill Dufresne and Lucas Carringer. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I know how dense it can be, and I personally wouldn't be able to read.
that's just one example. When you're selling to techies, like people who are going to use something on a day-to-day basis, and they're looking beyond the dashboard, they're looking like how to set up the dashboard, for example. Which buttons am I going to click? Which fields am I going to fill? It just gets into too much details that, as sales engineers and marketing people, it seems, we don't want to get into that details, because you're going to do it once and never do it again, or you're going to do it once every 6 months. It doesn't really matter. Give me a call when you do it. I'll help you, right? So yeah, that makes it hard. Is there something that would surprise if sales engineers ever move into marketing? Is there something that would really surprise them?
Oh boy, I don't know where to begin and what's appropriate and not.
Maybe you should have started this
Be a
question.
weird conversation. Let me surprise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some form or fashion, the SEs have a free reign, I would think, looking from this side, to work with the customers. They don't have tied, well, you have boundaries, of course, and within the product, but you can, you're kind of free to do what you please to a certain extent. When you come to product marketing, you cannot do that. I guess there are certain guidelines and boundaries you have to work within, and at times, you find you want to say something, you want to do certain things, but you're restricted, and then your frustration level may go up. So that could be one of the things. You have to be really resilient, because what happens is, again, going back to the definition of PMM, what is really PMM? Are you sales? No. Are you product management? No. Are you engineering? No. Do you do are you customer support? No. Do you help sales? Yes. Do you help engineering? Yes. So you see where I'm going with this, right? It's like a hybrid bike. It's like, is it a mountain bike? No. Is it a road bike? No. It's like it's the worst of both the bikes, right? Kind of thing. So not approved for PMM. I know Bin is laughing, but case in point is that might be surprising to an SE, because what are you going to do? So you got to be a little bit more flexible and resilient that way. But that's the nature of PMM. It's sometimes, and you get different names for, like some people think you do advertising. Some people think you do EBC and BDM and TDM decks only, right? You're like a highly paid PowerPoint designer. So those kind of things you might be surprising to an SE who might come into a PMM. So we got to deal with all of this, man, so to speak.
I think, just out of curiosity, I actually don't know really what my answer would be to this yet, but would another surprise maybe be that a sales engineer who's doing some activities, let's say as a sales engineer with the specific deal, maybe their head is down trying to push the needle forward for this deal. And so let's say they spend, a couple of weeks and they move like 2 deals forward a little bit. Whereas in the PMM role, because they're doing everything just at a larger volume, or their audience is much larger, do you think that they may be surprised with maybe the value of their word and just how quickly that drives results for, let's say, the sales team and pushing MQLs towards, towards the sales funnel, just by virtue of sales engineer or the post or ex-sales engineer maybe throwing out a webinar and then all of a sudden getting a whole bunch of leads in towards a sales team? Would that be something that you think may be surprising to them? Or?
Actually, yes. So when I said earlier, was purely coming from a Cisco background at a large enterprise company. But if you were at a smaller company, you would be an SE would make an excellent impact. If the SE can actually do some of the things that a PMM does and speak to the customers, it would be pure gold, because now you are able to make that impact across the board. Absolutely, right? That totally makes sense. So as you go down, from how big a company you are, Cisco probably difficult, right? Because it's so many products and so many SEs and so many orgs and it's so many processes. But if you're a smaller company, like a mid-sized company where, you have some visibility and you can actually get on a call, right? Because the number of customers probably are smaller, you're not dealing with thousands of customers, probably dealing with maybe hundreds of customers. Then by all means, yeah. So I should have clarified earlier when I said that it was purely coming from a Cisco size company background. For a smaller company, it's a little bit different, I would think.
I would like basically every role, no matter which company you're in, the bigger the company is, the harder it is to do your job. Generally speaking, at least that's the way I see it. Like, I want to do for the current company I'm with, I want to do some videos to actually publish them, put them on YouTube. That way I don't have to do the same video, like, or show the same customer or different customers the same thing 5 times. So Snackwyze would be great. But they want me to add the logo, they want me to add the intro and outro music, they want to approve it, they want me to write a script and send it to them to approve before I record it. I'm like, dude, how about I just do it without telling you? And that's something I'm going to do later. I'm not going to, like, I'll ask for forgiveness after the fact.
You remind me so much. It's only been about a year since I left, that role. But these are exactly the words I would have said back then. Approve, brand approvals, process, and intro and outro is a real thing, by the way.
Dude, just like, let me do a quick video. I won't send it to anybody except the internet. Like,
you know what? There's a way around it. Maybe you can call it the unofficial guide, and then you will not be liable for.
I can put it under my own name, like my own YouTube channel, whatever. I'll open another unofficial, whatever.
Unofficial guide to Ixia. Then you're off the hook.
Okay, all right. Well, good point. So that's a good tip for everyone listening. All right, I think it's time to move on to the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions we ask almost every guest.
Oh, okay.
I think you've heard them before, and we've changed one just to make it interesting. Right. So what should we ask, Benny? Well, this is your question. You figure it out.
Yeah, that's all good. So I mean, you talked a lot about, obviously product marketing quite a bit. What do you love about it?
Yeah. So what do I love? That's a tough question, man. You shouldn't be asking such questions. Product marketing, I like I said earlier, right? When I was a hardware engineer, being in the lab was absolutely no. I know what I didn't like, right? I didn't like absolutely being in the lab, but I like the fact I could talk to customers. I like to be at the forefront of shows and events and be talking to the customers that way, right? I like to, I also like to create content. I don't know how many people like it, but I like to, be out, communicating on an outgoing, like at a basis such that many people are trying to understand it. I can talk about that, right? So those are some of the aspects that I find that a product marketer can do.
So why didn't you ever go into sales engineering?
I don't know, man. I mean, I guess I started working with product, and like I said, right, it was just a pure coincidence that so I never considered sales, and I don't know, it never came to me naturally. I guess my dad was a sales engineer. I know that he sold, but I just went into it. So no particular reason, man. I love to go to Vegas, I guess.
Well, sales engineers go to Vegas too.
So. I know. I'm just kidding. But on a serious note, I think the ability to be customer facing in that role, not one-on-one, but to many, doing some creativity. I like creativity, right? I mean, I actually on my self-taught caricaturist. Well, yeah, I can do your caricatures, right? So I like to be on the creative side. And you're mute again, by the way, Benny. But
yeah.
So those things, I think is only product marketing. You can kind of express those things while being technical at the same time. You don't have to be non-technical at all. So I guess it's a good spot for me.
Just so you know, I can draw a caricature of Benny. Just draw a beard.
Yeah,
one big beard.
The qualifier should have been good. Yeah. Not doubting your skills.
Oh, you should. I failed drawing when I was like 12 years old, and we used to study that in high school in Lebanon. In school, we had one school for all ages, and I failed drawing. Failed painting between the lines throughout my school journey.
Abstract caricature.
Where may we see your creativity, man? Where should I go and see? Where should I check it out?
You can check out the blog that I just wrote for Vivin. I feel like that's.
Oh, I saw that. It came across my LinkedIn today morning. I'm gonna check it out.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much the only the other creative place is just random ideas I come up with that never come to fruition. But yeah, that's besides the point. All right, what would you change? I think we talked a lot about that, but what would you change about marketing in general, or one big thing you would change about marketing?
Yeah, so I think this is a point that is pretty. I've been thinking about this a lot. So one thing what marketing can do better is the accountability, or what's the kind of value you can quantify. Because today, a lot of marketing, I think, for various reasons, right? Lack of tools, maybe, or lack of processes, or what marketing does, from one product launch to another, a lot of that gets lost in translation. So what value does a real product marketing organization bring to the table? It's not easy to quantify. If there were one thing that could be changed, I think it would be to flip it around and see, hey, what value do we want to bring to the organization? Do we want to be in between the three cogs, or do you want to be the fourth cog and contribute in a meaningful way where you can actually measure the impact that a PMM has? And by doing so, then the PMM guys or the PMM team would have more ownership and more say and more voice in the bottom line. Today, I think that's the aspect that's missing to a certain extent, and there is a lot of frustration for that reason too. Is you don't know what exactly are you contributing at the end of the day, because you're doing so many things. So that's definitely one thing I feel strongly about needs to change.
And that's what I love about sales engineering, at least where I'm at. You hit your quota, you sold, you can measure it. Like it's so easy, especially if it's one-to-one pairing with salespeople. Anyways, question number 3, Binny.
Yeah. So what are some books or tools or resources you may recommend for people that want to learn a little bit more about product marketing, or I guess about product marketing?
Yeah. So there's one book I really like. It's a very subset of what product marketing does. But and I've had, I spoke to her as well. It's I forget the name of the book. It's by April Dunford. It's about positioning. I think it's Simply Awesome. Simply Awesome. I want to say Simply Awesome, but it's by April Dunford, and
Obviously.
it's real. Sorry.
Obviously awesome.
Obviously awesome. Yeah, there you go. That's a good read. It's a short book. It talks only about positioning, but it gives you the context of why positioning is the most important thing for a product marketer. There are many things that product marketer does, right? There's so many things like product launches, and you'll find that. But this one I liked it because this is where it all begins. Is how do you want to position? Like how you position yourself, right? Who are you? How, as a marketer, would you position yourself, or your product rather, and start talking about it? Because if you don't have that positioning right, everything else is not going to make sense. So that is one of my favorite books. I learned a lot from it just by reading that small little book. Yeah.
All right, I need to get
it. Precursor to that book is here, by the way. I keep it as it's a precursor to that book, but it's an older book. It's again positioning. There's a whole book on it, but it's I would say April Dunford's book is it's my choice.
All right. Well, we should check out April Dunford. She's not a millennial.
No, she's not. But she's pretty cool.
I'm just thinking about obviously awesome, like felt millennially to me.
That was obviously awesome.
Okay, sorry.
But also, Everything is Awesome is an amazing. There's I think like 2 or 3 books called Everything is Awesome. There's a guy who did a TED Talk about just like, I don't know if it has to do with positivity or just like his mindset about life being awesome. And it's like an amazing TED Talk, and his book is also wonderful.
Okay, great.
But this book does sound awesome.
All right, last question of the not so fire round. Now that you've started your own company, is there a habit that you're working on that you think will make you more productive?
I don't know what to say. Yes. I think there's a habit, one habit that I can really implement. And it is nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. Is ever since I started, my own company again, I've been glued to my seat here, and I've pretty much felt like I've been glued to it, really. Like I cannot get up. So, and I, to a certain extent, because when you have a 9-to-5 year, once you're done, right? But right now I'm just, it's impossible for me to stop. It's just impossible for my brain to stop. So every other day, or I try to go every day. There's a short little hike here where I saw the mountain lion, by the way. I'll try to make it a point to at least go 45 minutes and religiously go for a walk and clear my head. That's like one habit I think is tremendously helping me, because it's like scatterbrain everywhere. Should I do this? Should I do that? Whom should I talk to? What should I do? What's the next feature, right? It just killing me. I want to say, it's exciting. It's not for the wrong reasons, it's the right reasons, but I cannot catch, I cannot take a break, I guess, mentally. But that's one habit I've decided to stick on to.
Yeah.
And I'm less crankier. I'm more crankier than my kids, I would say, if I don't do that. So.
Yeah. No, I get that. And right now with the whole COVID situation where everybody's working from home, there is no office hours. There is no 9 to 5. It's just, you end up working longer. So I agree with you that that's a good habit to actually develop.
And stay a little bit fit,
I'm not one to talk about that, but sure. Last question of the day. If people want to reach out and talk to you, where can they do that?
Oh, it's simple. Should I put my phone number? No.
If you want.
No, I love to talk to people. As many people, it's just short. So I would love on my LinkedIn, and even my email is ND, like my first name, initials, and last names at snackwyze.com. LinkedIn and personal email are the best. And once we're connected, my phone number, I think the text is the best, is what I say. I love to connect on text so I can talk to people. But yeah.
Perfect, Neeraj. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, talking about marketing. And, we really appreciate it and we'll hope to continue this conversation in the future.
Absolutely, man. It's been fun. And thank you so much, you guys. I mean, you guys have built a brand, I would say. That's tremendous. I mean, doing this, like I said earlier, 150 plus is no mean feat. So kudos to you guys doing this.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Talk later. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Neeraj, for coming on. If you were interested in checking out Snackwyze, they are not sponsoring the show, but check it out. See if it works for you. And I enjoyed our conversation with Neeraj. I really like to talk to a lot of people within the industry and learning about some of the struggles that marketing people go through, especially product marketing, was interesting. I never thought about what they go through in the politics that they have to do. And, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got out of the show as much as I did. And at least it's convinced me that maybe I should not pursue product marketing in a large company. Yeah, at least it did that, amongst other things. And that's pretty much it. I'm not going to belabor the point. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you being here. Check out the website if you haven't done so in a while. I do have the Road to Sales Engineering course open for those who are interested in becoming sales engineers or are looking to change companies, I guess. So check it out. And it's wethesaleengineers.com/R2SE. And I will see you next time. For the Invisible Benny, this is Ramsey signing off.